My name is Elise Dawson. I'm 29 years old. 8 months ago, I came home from a 14-month deployment in the Middle East. I had survived sandstorms, mortar fire, and nights so dark and quiet you could hear your own heartbeat echoing off concrete walls. I survived all of that. What I didn't survive was coming home, because when I pulled into the driveway of my grandmother's Lakehouse, the house she promised me, the house I grew up in every summer, the house I had been dreaming about for 14 months while sleeping on a cot in a desert, the locks were changed. My brother's car was in the driveway. His wife's flower pots were on my grandmother's porch, and taped to the front door was a note in my mother's handwriting that said, "Elise, we need to talk. Call us when you get this." That was it. No welcome home, no thank you for your service. No explanation for why my brother was living in the house my dying grandmother had looked me in the eye and promised was mine. I stood on that porch in my uniform, my deployment bag at my feet, and called my mother. She answered on the third ring. "Oh, Elise, you're back already? We thought you weren't coming home until next month. I told you my rotation ended early." "Mom, why is Derek living in Grandma's house?" Silence. The kind of silence that isn't empty. The kind that's full of things someone doesn't want to say. "Your father and I made some decisions while you were away. We didn't want to worry you during your deployment." "What decisions?" "The house, Elise, we transferred the deed to Derek. He needed it more than you. You're in the military, you have housing. Derek has a family." I couldn't speak. My mouth opened, but nothing came out. The woman who had raised me had just told me, in the same tone she used to discuss grocery lists, that they had given away my inheritance while I was overseas defending the country they lived in. "When did this happen?" "About 6 months ago. Your father handled the paperwork." 6 months. They had waited until I was on the other side of the world, unreachable, buried in a deployment with limited communication, and signed away a $450,000 lakefront property to my brother. Grandma left that house to me. She told me. She promised. She didn't leave a will, Elise. My mother's voice hardened. There was no legal document. The house passed to your father as next of kin. And your father and I decided together that Derek and his family needed a home. I looked through the front window. New curtains. New furniture. A child's bicycle in the hallway. They hadn't just moved in. They had settled in. They had made it theirs. "I need to go," I said. "Elise, don't make this into something it's not. Derek is your brother. Family takes care of family." I hung up, sat down on the porch steps of the house that was supposed to be mine, pressed my forehead against my knees, and for the first time in 14 months, I cried. Not because of the house, not because of the money, because I had spent my entire life being the one who served, the one who sacrificed, the one who showed up. And the moment I couldn't watch, they took everything. But here's what my parents didn't know. What Derek didn't know. What nobody knew except me and one. Very sharp military attorney. My grandmother did leave a will. She just didn't leave it where anyone expected to find it. And what was in that will would tear apart everything my parents thought they had gotten away with. Reedy Creek, North Carolina. Population 8,000. The kind of town where everybody knows your business before you do, and church parking lots are fuller than grocery stores on Sunday mornings. I grew up on Maple Ridge Road, a 3-bedroom ranch house with vinyl siding and a yard that turned to mud every spring. My father, Glenn Dawson, worked at the lumber mill on Route 15. 32 years, same shift, same lunch pail, same complaints about his back and his boss. My mother, Patrice Dawson, worked part-time at the elementary school cafeteria. She ran the PTA for 6 years. Not because she loved education, but because she loved being in charge of something. And then there was Derek, my older brother, 2 years ahead of me, the golden child, the prince of Maple Ridge Road. Derek Dawson could do no wrong. I need you to understand how literal that statement is. Not figuratively, not mostly, literally. In the Dawson household, Derek existed in a universe where consequences did not apply to him. He crashed my father's truck at 17. Dad blamed the deer he claimed ran across the road. There was no deer. He dropped out of community college after 1 semester. Mom called him an entrepreneur finding his own path. He got fired from 3 jobs in 2 years. Dad said the bosses were jealous of his potential. When Derek married his girlfriend Ashley at 23, My parents took out a $15,000 loan to pay for the wedding, a wedding I was not asked to be a bridesmaid at. I found out about this when my mother mentioned casually that they were still paying it off 2 years later. And then there was me. I was the quiet one. The one who mowed the lawn without being asked. The one who started working at the hardware store at 15 because I wanted to buy my own school supplies so I wouldn't have to ask for money. The one who made the honor roll every semester and got a nod from my father and a "that's nice" Elise from my mother. When I told my parents I was joining the army after high school, my father looked up from his dinner and said, "Well, at least you'll have a roof over your head." My mother cried, not because she was proud, because she was worried about what the neighbors would think about a girl from Reedy Creek enlisting instead of going to college like a normal person. Derek, who at that point was living in their basement playing video games and eating their food at 20 years old, said nothing. But there was one person who understood. One person who saw me, really saw me, not as the quiet one or the responsible one or the one who didn't need anything. My grandmother. Ruth Dawson. Grandma Ruth lived on Lake Harmon, 7 miles outside of town. The house sat on 2 acres of waterfront property with a dock that stretched 30 feet into the lake, and a wraparound porch where she kept a rocking chair she claimed was older than the state of North Carolina itself. She bought that house in 1978 with money she saved working as a bookkeeper at the county courthouse for 22 years, paid cash, no mortgage. She was that kind of woman, the kind who kept envelopes of cash labeled in her own handwriting. Groceries, taxes, emergencies. The kind who could stretch $1 until it begged for mercy and then stretch it some more. The house was valued at $450,000 by 2023. Lakefront property in North Carolina had exploded in value over the past decade. What Ruth Dawson had purchased for $62,000 in 1978 was now worth more than everything else the Dawson family owned combined, and everyone knew it. I started spending summers at Grandma Ruth's house when I was 7. My parents would drop me off on the first day of June and pick me up the last week of August. At first, I thought it was a treat. Later, I realized it was convenience. One less child to feed during the expensive summer months. But those summers became the foundation of everything I am. Grandma Ruth taught me to fish from the dock at sunrise. She taught me to change a tire, fix a leaky faucet, and read a financial statement. She let me help her with her bookkeeping, showing me how to balance accounts and track expenses with the precision of someone who believed every penny mattered. "You don't need someone to take care of you, Elise," she told me once, while we were sitting on that porch watching the sun go down over Lake Harmon. "You need to learn to take care of yourself, because the people who should take care of you won't always do it." I was 12 when she said that. I didn't understand then who she was talking about. I do now. Derek never spent summers at the Lakehouse. He came for occasional weekends, usually when he wanted something. Grandma Ruth tolerated him the way you tolerate a fly at a picnic, with patience, but without affection. "That boy has your father's charm and your mother's entitlement," she told me once. That's a dangerous combination in a person who's never been told no. She wasn't wrong. The promise happened on a Tuesday evening in September 2017. I remember it exactly, because I had just received my orders for my first deployment. I was 22 years old, a specialist in the Army, assigned to a logistics unit headed to Kuwait. I drove to Grandma Ruth's house that evening to tell her in person. She was 78 years old, still sharp as a tack, still keeping her own books, still walking down to the dock every morning to watch the sunrise. I found her on the porch rocking chair creaking against the wooden boards, a glass of sweet tea in her hand. "Sit down, Elise. You've got that look." What look? The one that says something big is happening and you're trying to figure out how to tell me. I sat in the chair beside her, the one she kept there just for me. Nobody else sat in that chair. Not Derek, not my father, not anyone. "I'm being deployed. Kuwait. 6 months, maybe longer." She didn't react the way my parents had. My mother had cried about what people would think. My father had grunted and asked if the Army would pay for her dental work. Derek hadn't responded to my text at all. Grandma Ruth just nodded. Then she reached over and took my hand. "You're going to be fine," she said, "because you're the toughest person in this family. Always have been." We sat in silence for a few minutes. The lake was still. A heron stood on the dock like a statue. Then she spoke again. "Elise, I need to tell you something, and I need you to listen carefully because I'm only going to say this once." I turned to face her. "This house is yours. When I'm gone, this house, this land, everything on it goes to you. Not your father, not Derek. You. Grandma, you don't have to. I'm not asking your permission. She squeezed my hand. I'm telling you my decision. I've watched you grow up in this house. I've watched you love this place the way I love it. You're the only one who does. She looked out at the lake. Your father sees dollar signs when he looks at this property. Derek sees a free place to live. But you see what I see, a home. I'm going to have papers drawn up, she continued. Proper legal documents. I've already talked to a lawyer in Asheville, Margaret Chen. She specializes in estate planning. Grandma, I'm about to deploy. Can we do this when I get back? She hesitated. Something flickered across her face. Something I didn't recognize then, but understand now. It was fear. Not fear of dying. Fear of what would happen after she died. We'll do it when you get back, she agreed. But Elise, promise me something. Anything. Don't tell your parents about this. Not your father, not your mother, and especially not Derek. Why? Because I know my son, and I know what he'll do if he finds out this house isn't going to him. I promised. I deployed to Kuwait 3 weeks later. When I came home 6 months later, Grandma Ruth was in the hospital. Pancreatic cancer. Diagnosed 2 months into my deployment. Nobody told me until I landed. I drove straight from the airport to the hospital. Still in uniform. Still carrying my bag. I walked into her room and she looked at me with those sharp eyes that hadn't dimmed even as the rest of her faded. The papers, she whispered. I got the papers done. Margaret Chen has everything. I held her hand. We can talk about that later. You need to rest. No. She gripped my hand with surprising strength. Listen to me. Margaret Chen. Asheville. She has the will and something else. Something I added. What did you add? Insurance. Her eyes locked onto mine. Because I know what's coming, Elise. I know what they'll do. She died 11 days later. March 14th, 2018. I held her hand until the end. At the funeral, my father cried for 10 minutes. Then he asked the real estate agent sitting 3 rows back how much lakefront property was going for these days. I heard him. He didn't know I heard him. But I heard him. And I should have known right then what was coming. After Grandma Ruth died, I expected my father to mention the house, to bring up the estate, to ask about a will. He never did. Instead, something strange happened. Nothing. The house sat empty. The lights stayed off. The dock collected leaves. My father paid the property taxes from Grandma Ruth's bank account, which he had access to as next of kin, and said nothing about the future of the property. I asked once, Thanksgiving 2018, 8 months after the funeral, Dad, what's happening with Grandma's house? He looked up from his turkey. What do you mean? Are you going to sell it? Rent it? What's the plan? He exchanged a glance with my mother, the kind of glance married couples use when they've rehearsed an answer. We're keeping it in the family for now, he said. No rush. Your grandmother would have wanted us to take our time. I almost spoke up. I almost said Grandma told me the house was mine, she had papers drawn up. But I remembered her warning. Don't tell your parents. Especially not Derek. So I said nothing. And I made a decision that would later prove to be either the smartest or the most devastating choice of my life. I didn't contact Margaret Chen. I told myself there was time. The house was sitting empty. Nobody was making moves. I had another deployment coming up in 2019. I would deal with the legal paperwork when things settled down. That was my mistake. Assuming that because nothing was happening on the surface, nothing was happening underneath, my second deployment was 14 months. Afghanistan. I left in January 2020 and didn't come home until March 2021, the longest 14 months of my life. Convoy security. Supply route logistics. Temperatures that could blister skin and silence that could break your mind. Communication was limited. Sporadic email, occasional phone calls on a satellite connection that made everyone sound like they were talking through a tin can underwater. I emailed my parents twice a month. Short updates, I'm alive, I'm safe, miss you? My mother responded to about half of them. Short replies, we're fine. Derek says hi. Church is good. Garrick never emailed me once. Not once in 14 months. I sent him a message on his birthday. Happy birthday, Derek. Hope you and Ashley are well. His response, 3 days later, thanks. One word. That was my brother's entire communication with me during a combat deployment. But I wasn't thinking about Derek. I wasn't thinking about the house. I was thinking about surviving. About getting my unit home safely. About the faces of the people I was responsible for and the weight of decisions that could mean life or death. When you're in a place like that, home becomes a concept more than a location. It's not an address. It's a feeling. And for me, that feeling was Grandma Ruth's porch. The creak of the rocking chair, the smell of the lake at sunrise, the sound of her voice telling me I was the toughest person in this family. That's what I was coming home to. Or so I thought. March 2021. My unit rotated home. We landed at Fort Bragg on a Wednesday afternoon. I processed out, collected my personal vehicle from storage, and drove 7 hours straight to Reedy Creek. I didn't call ahead. I wanted to surprise everyone. The first thing I noticed when I turned onto Lake Harmon Road was the mailbox. Grandma Ruth's mailbox had been green with hand-painted daisies she'd added in 1992. The mailbox I saw was new, black, modern, with a name on the side. Dawson. Not Ruth Dawson. Just Dawson. My stomach tightened. Like it was the most natural thing in the world. I didn't go inside. I couldn't. Not because I wasn't allowed, but because if I walked through that door and saw what they had done to every room my grandmother had loved, I would break. And I was not going to break on that porch. I got back in my car and drove to a motel on Route 15. $47 a night, a bed that smelled like bleach, and a shower with questionable water pressure. I sat on that motel bed still in my uniform and made 2 phone calls. The first was to my mother, the conversation I already told you about, the one where she said Derek needed it more than you. The second call was to a number I should have dialed 3 years earlier. Margaret Chen, attorney at law, Asheville, North Carolina. She answered on the second ring. Miss Dawson. Margaret Chen's voice was calm, professional, and completely unsurprised. I've been expecting your call. You've been expecting me. Your grandmother told me you would call eventually. She just hoped it wouldn't be under these circumstances. I gripped the phone. What circumstances? The circumstances where your family did exactly what she predicted they would do. Margaret Chen was 53 years old, estate planning attorney, 26 years of experience. Grandma Ruth had found her through a referral from the county courthouse where she worked for 2 decades. They had met in person 4 times between September 2017 and February 2018, the month before Grandma Ruth died. I need to see you in person, Margaret said. Can you come to Asheville? I'll be there tomorrow. Bring identification. Military ID, driver's license, anything with your full legal name. I drove to Asheville the next morning. 3 hours through mountain roads with fog so thick I could barely see the center line. Margaret's office was on the 4th floor of a brick building downtown, small but immaculate. Law books lining every wall. A framed photo of the Blue Ridge Mountains behind her desk. She was waiting for me with a cup of coffee and a manila folder that was at least 2 inches thick. Sit down, Elise. We have a lot to cover. She opened the folder. Your grandmother came to me in September 2017. Right after you told her about your first deployment, she was concerned, deeply concerned. About what? About what would happen to her property if she died before you returned. She didn't trust your father. She said, and I'm quoting from my notes here, Glenn will give that house to Derek before the dirt on my grave settles. That sounds like her. Margaret pulled out a document. White pages, blue backing, notarized stamps on every page. This is your grandmother's last will and testament. Executed October 3rd, 2017. Witnessed by 2 independent parties. Notarized by a certified notary public in Buncombe County. I stared at it. My mother said there was no will. Your mother is either lying or was never informed. Margaret's voice was precise. Your grandmother specifically instructed me not to notify any family members about this document until you personally contacted me. Why? Because she knew exactly what would happen. Margaret opened to the first page. And she was right. The will was 12 pages long. Clear, detailed, written in legal language that left no room for interpretation. I'll give you the key provisions. The property at 417 Lake Harmon Road, Reedy Creek, North Carolina, including the house, land dock, and all structures thereon, is bequeathed solely and entirely to my granddaughter, Elise Marie Dawson. My hands started shaking. This bequest is made with the explicit intention of excluding my son, Glenn Arthur Dawson, and my grandson, Derek Glenn Dawson, from any claim to said property. This decision is made freely, without coercion, and with full understanding of its implications." Margaret looked up. "There's more. All personal property within the residence, including but not limited to furniture, artwork, books, financial records, and personal effects, is bequeathed to Elise Marie Dawson." She turned the page. "Additionally, the sum of $68,000 held in a separate account at Blue Ridge Federal Credit Union, account details attached, is bequeathed to Elise Marie Dawson for the purpose of property maintenance, taxes, and any legal expenses that may arise from the enforcement of this will." I looked up. "She left money for legal expenses?" Margaret nodded. "Your grandmother was a bookkeeper for 22 years. She understood numbers. And she understood people. She anticipated a fight. She anticipated exactly what happened." Margaret closed the folder. "Now let me tell you what your parents did and why it doesn't matter." I leaned forward. "Your father petitioned the county probate court in April 2018, 1 month after Ruth's death. He filed as next of kin, claiming there was no will. The court granted him administrative authority over the estate, because nobody knew about the will, because your grandmother designed it that way. She wanted the will held in escrow with my office until you personally claimed it. She was protecting it from your father." Margaret pulled out another document. "In September 2020, while you were deployed, your father executed a quitclaim deed transferring the Lake Harmon property to Derek Glenn Dawson. The deed was filed with the County Register of Deeds. No consideration was listed, meaning no money changed hands. He just gave it away. He gave away property he had no legal right to transfer." Margaret's voice hardened. "Because Ruth's will supersedes his probate claim. He obtained administrative authority under the false premise that no will existed. That authority is void. The transfer to Derek is void. The deed is invalid. The property belongs to you. It has always belonged to you." I sat in that chair and felt something I hadn't felt since standing on my grandmother's porch watching the sunset. Hope. "But there's something else," Margaret said. She reached into the folder and pulled out a sealed envelope. Cream-colored. My grandmother's handwriting on the front. For Elise. When she's ready. Your grandmother gave me this the last time I saw her. February 2018. 3 weeks before she died. She told me to give it to you when you came for the will. I took the envelope. My grandmother's handwriting. The same handwriting that had labeled jars of homemade jam and written birthday cards that always said the same thing. Be brave. Be smart. Be you. Should I open it now? That's up to you. I slid my finger under the seal. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Handwritten. Dated February 19th, 2018. My dearest Elise. If you're reading this, then what I feared has happened. Your father has done something with my house, and you've had to come to Margaret to set it right. I'm sorry, sweetheart. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you from this while I was alive, but I can protect you now. Everything you need is in Margaret's hands. The will, the account, the records. She knows what to do. But there's one more thing. Something I didn't put in the will because it's not about property. It's about truth. In the filing cabinet in my bedroom, bottom drawer, behind the tax folders, there is a brown envelope. Inside that envelope is every financial record from the past 15 years. Every dollar your father borrowed from me and never repaid. Every check I wrote for Derek's rent, Derek's car, Derek's wedding. Every time I said yes when I should have said no. The total is $143,000. I kept those records because I wanted you to know the truth. Not for revenge, for clarity. So that when they tell you they deserve that house, when they say family takes care of family, you can look at those numbers and understand exactly what kind of family they've been. Be brave, be smart, be you. All my love, Grandma Ruth. I folded the letter and put it back in the envelope. My eyes were burning, but I was not going to cry. Not yet. Not until this was finished. Margaret, I said, what do we do now? She smiled, the kind of smile that made me understand why my grandmother had chosen her. Now we get your house back. Before we continue, let me ask you something. Had you ever trusted someone to protect what was yours only to discover they were the ones stealing it? I'd love to know what you would have done in my position. Drop a comment below. And if you want to see how this all unfolds, hit that subscribe button, because what happened in that courtroom, even I didn't see coming. Margaret Chen laid out the legal strategy over the next 2 hours. Step 1. File the will with Buncombe County Probate Court immediately. This establishes Ruth's will as the controlling document and automatically invalidates Glenn's prior probate filing. Step 2. File a motion to void the quitclaim deed from Glenn to Derek. Since Glenn obtained administrative authority through false representation, specifically claiming no will existed, every action he took as administrator is subject to reversal. Step 3. Notify Derek and Glenn through formal legal channels that the property transfer is being challenged. Give them 30 days to respond. And Step 4. I asked. Margaret paused. Step 4 depends on them. If they cooperate, if they acknowledge the will and vacate the property voluntarily, this can be resolved without a courtroom. And if they don't cooperate, then we go to court. And I should tell you, Elise, based on 30 years of watching families fight over property, they won't cooperate. She was right. The certified letters were sent on a Thursday. One to my father, one to Derek, both containing copies of the will, the letter from Margaret's office, and a formal request to vacate the Lake Harmon property within 30 days. My father called me 6 hours after the letter arrived. What the hell is this, Elise? His voice was shaking. Not with fear, with rage. It's Grandma's will, Dad. The one you told the court didn't exist. Your grandmother was confused at the end. She didn't know what she was signing. She executed that will 5 months before her diagnosis. She was sharp enough to hire an attorney, arrange witnesses, set up a separate bank account, and write me a letter explaining exactly why she didn't trust you. Silence. You're going to tear this family apart over a house? You tore this family apart when you stole a house from your deployed daughter. He hung up. Derek called 20 minutes later. Different approach. Softer. The voice he used when he wanted something. Elise, hey, can we talk about this? I'm sure there's been a misunderstanding. There's no misunderstanding, Derek. You're living in a house that legally belongs to me. But we've been here for 6 months. The kids are settled. Ashley planted a garden. We can't just... You can, and you will. I have a valid will. You have an invalid deed. This isn't a negotiation. His voice changed. Harder now. The real Derek surfacing under the charm. You know what your problem is, Elise? You've always been jealous. Jealous that Mom and Dad love me more. Jealous that I have a family and you don't. You went off to play soldier, and now you want to come back and take everything. I played soldier so you could sleep safely in a house you didn't earn. I kept my voice level. And the only thing I'm taking back is what was always mine. He hung up. He paused. Your case involves a service member whose property was transferred without consent during active deployment. That falls under the Service Members Civil Relief Act. I know about SCRA. Then you know that what your father did may constitute a federal violation. Transferring a service member's property rights during deployment without their knowledge or consent is not just a state probate issue. It's a matter of federal law. I sat down slowly. Miss Dawson, Major Okonkwo continued, I'd like to assist with your case, pro bono. If your father knowingly transferred property that belonged to you while you were deployed, the penalties go beyond losing the house. What kind of penalties? Fines, potential criminal charges. And any judge who hears that a father stole his daughter's inheritance while she was serving overseas is going to have a very strong reaction. He paused. I've seen a lot of cases, Miss Dawson, but this one made me angry. And I don't get angry easily. Margaret Chen and Major Okonkwo held a conference call the next day. I listened as 2 of the sharpest legal minds I'd ever encountered built a case that was part probate challenge, part federal civil rights violation, and entirely devastating. The court date was set, the evidence was assembled, the witnesses were confirmed, and then my mother called one more time. Elise, please, can we handle this as a family? Your father's health isn't good. The stress is affecting his heart. Then maybe he should have thought about that before he committed fraud. It's Thanksgiving in 2 weeks. Can't we just sit down together like a family? I thought about it. Actually, Mom, you're right. Let's do Thanksgiving. She brightened. Really? Really. Grandma Ruth's house. The whole family. Just like old times. She didn't hear the steel in my voice. She heard what she wanted to hear. Oh, Elise, that's wonderful. I'll tell your father. I'll tell Derek. We'll make it special. Yes, I said. We will. I hung up and called Margaret Chen. Change of plans, I said. We're not waiting for the court date. Margaret Chen listened to my plan in silence. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. You want to do this at Thanksgiving dinner, she said. Not a question. A confirmation. Yes, in front of the entire family. Every aunt, uncle, cousin, and neighbor my mother invites, which, knowing her, will be at least 30 people. Margaret exhaled slowly. Elise, as your attorney, I need to advise you that anything said at a family gathering could potentially complicate the court proceedings. I understand. And as a human being who watched your grandmother spend the last months of her life preparing for exactly this moment, I think it's exactly what she would have wanted. There was a pause. I'll have the documents ready. Everything organized, indexed, tabbed. If you're going to tell the truth, you're going to tell it with evidence. Thank you, Margaret. One more thing, she added. Major Okonkwo would like to attend. Not in uniform, not as a representative of the military, just as an observer. He says he wants to see the look on your father's face. Almost smiled. Tell him he's welcome. The next 2 weeks were a blur of preparation. Margaret compiled everything into a leather portfolio. 53 pages. The will, the probate records showing my father's false filing, the quitclaim deed, the bank records from Grandma Ruth's filing cabinet, the ones documenting $143,000 in money my father had borrowed and never repaid, the letter Grandma Ruth wrote me, a timeline showing every key event from September 2017 to present. I also reached out to 2 people who had been quietly watching this unfold from the edges. Aunt Della, my father's younger sister, 61 years old, retired postal worker from Asheville. She had loved Grandma Ruth fiercely and had been suspicious about the house situation for years. I knew something was wrong, she told me on the phone. When Glenn said Mama didn't leave a will, I didn't believe it. That woman documented everything. She kept receipts from 1974. You're telling me she didn't plan for her own house? She did plan, Aunt Della. She planned for everything. When Della heard about the will, the fraud, the deployment timing, she went quiet for 30 seconds. Then she said 4 words. I'll be at Thanksgiving. The second person was Pastor James Holland from Reedy Creek Community Church, my grandmother's church. The church where my father sat in the 3rd pew every Sunday morning looking righteous. Pastor Holland had officiated Grandma Ruth's funeral. He had known her for 30 years. When I called him and explained what had happened, his response was measured but unmistakable. Elise, your grandmother was one of the most principled people I've ever known. If she left a will, then that will represent her wishes, and those wishes should be honored. Would you be willing to come to Thanksgiving dinner? Not to take sides, just to be present? He paused. I think your grandmother would want me there. Yes, I'll come. The pieces were falling into place. But I wasn't building a trap. I was building a stage. The same way my mother had staged every family gathering for years, performing the role of devoted wife and loving mother while treating me like an afterthought. I was going to use her stage against her. My mother called 3 times that week to discuss the menu. Turkey or ham, sweet potatoes, or mashed. Did I want to bring a dish? I'll bring dessert, I told her. Grandma Ruth's pecan pie recipe. Oh, that would be lovely, she said. Ruth did make the best pecan pie. She didn't hear the irony. She never did. I knew something was wrong, she told me on the phone. When Glenn said Mama didn't leave a will, I didn't believe it. That woman documented everything. She kept receipts from 1974. You're telling me she didn't plan for her own house? She did plan, Aunt Della. She planned for everything. When Della heard about the will, the fraud, the deployment timing, she went quiet for 30 seconds. Then she said 4 words. I'll be at Thanksgiving. The second person was Pastor James Holland from Reedy Creek Community Church, my grandmother's church. The church where my father sat in the 3rd pew every Sunday morning looking righteous. Pastor Holland had officiated Grandma Ruth's funeral. He had known her for 30 years. When I called him and explained what had happened, his response was measured but unmistakable. Elise, your grandmother was one of the most principled people I've ever known. If she left a will, then that will represent her wishes, and those wishes should be honored. Would you be willing to come to Thanksgiving dinner? Not to take sides, just to be present? He paused. I think your grandmother would want me there. Yes, I'll come. The pieces were falling into place. But I wasn't building a trap. I was building a stage. The same way my mother had staged every family gathering for years, performing the role of devoted wife and loving mother while treating me like an afterthought. I was going to use her stage against her. My mother called 3 times that week to discuss the menu. Turkey or ham, sweet potatoes, or mashed. Did I want to bring a dish? I'll bring dessert, I told her. Grandma Ruth's pecan pie recipe. Oh, that would be lovely, she said. Ruth did make the best pecan pie. She didn't hear the irony. She never did. The morning of Thanksgiving, I woke up at 5:30 in my motel room on Route 15. I had been living there for 3 weeks. $47 a night. $1,128 so far on a credit card I was trying not to think about. I showered, put on a simple dress. Dark blue. Professional but not aggressive. Flat shoes. Hair pulled back, no makeup except a little mascara because I knew I might cry and I didn't want to give anyone the satisfaction of watching it run down my face. I picked up the leather portfolio from the desk. 53 pages of truth. Then I drove to my grandmother's house, the house that was legally mine, the house my brother was living in, the house where my family was about to sit down for Thanksgiving dinner pretending everything was normal. It was time to stop pretending. Thanksgiving Day, November 23rd, 2021, 2:14 in the afternoon. I pulled into the driveway of 417 Lake Harmon Road and parked behind a line of cars that stretched down the gravel shoulder. My mother had outdone herself. 34 guests. Every Dawson, every neighbor, every church member who had ever brought a casserole to a funeral. The house looked beautiful from the outside. Smoke curling from the chimney, warm light in every window. A wreath on the door that I recognized as one my grandmother had made by hand 8 years ago. At least they had kept that. Aunt Della was already there. She met me at the end of the driveway, her arms crossed, her expression a mixture of fury and anticipation. You ready for this? No, but I'm doing it anyway. She squeezed my arm. Your grandma is watching. Make her proud. Major Okonkwo arrived 5 minutes later. Civilian clothes? Khaki pants? Blue blazer. He looked like any other guest except for the posture. 30 years of military service doesn't leave your spine. He carried a briefcase that contained backup copies of every document in my portfolio. Miss Dawson. He shook my hand. Whatever happens in there, you've already won. The law is on your side. This is just about making sure everyone knows it. Pastor Holland parked his truck at the curb. He walked over with the quiet authority of a man who had spent decades shepherding people through their worst moments. Elise. He nodded. I'm here, whatever you need. I looked at the 3 of them. My aunt, a military attorney, a pastor. Not the family I was born into, but the people who showed up when it mattered. Let's go inside. The front door opened into a wall of noise and warmth. Conversations layered over each other. Children running through rooms, the smell of turkey and cornbread and sweet potatoes, my grandmother's house filled with the sounds of a family that had stolen it. My mother spotted me first. She rushed over with a smile that was 60% relief and 40% performance. Elise, you came. Oh, sweetheart. I'm so glad. She hugged me. I let her. It would be the last time. And you brought friends. She eyed Aunt Della, Major Okonkwo, and Pastor Holland with carefully masked confusion. Well, the more the merrier. Come in, come in. Dinner's almost ready. Derek was in the living room, my grandmother's living room, sitting in my grandmother's armchair, the one she sat in every evening to read. He had a beer in one hand and his phone in the other. Ashley was in the kitchen directing operations like she owned the place. Because in her mind, she did. Hey, sis. Derek raised his beer without standing. Glad you could make it. I set my portfolio on the side table by the door. Wouldn't miss it. The next hour was the longest performance of my life. I made small talk. I helped set the table. I smiled at cousins and accepted hugs from neighbors and pretended that everything was normal. That I was fine. That sitting in my grandmother's house while my brother lounged in her chair didn't make me want to scream. At 3:30, my mother announced dinner. 34 people crowded around a table that had been extended with folding tables and covered in mismatched tablecloths. I sat at the far end, Aunt Della beside me, Major Okonkwo across from us, Pastor Holland near the middle. My father said grace. Thank you, Lord, for this food, this family, and this beautiful home that brings us together. This beautiful home. The home he stole. I bit the inside of my cheek and said, Amen. The meal was loud and chaotic and exactly what my mother lived for. She circulated like a hostess at a gala, refilling glasses and accepting compliments and performing the role of matriarch with practiced ease. At 4:15, between the turkey and the pie, my mother clinked her glass. Before dessert, I just want to say how thankful I am. She stood dabbing her eyes. This year has been challenging, but we're all here together, and I'm especially thankful that Elise is home safe from her deployment. Polite applause. A few amens. My father nodded. And I want to thank Derek and Ashley for opening this beautiful home to all of us today. She gestured around the room. Mama Ruth would be so proud to see her family gathered here. Derek smiled humbly. Ashley dabbed a tear. I stood up. Actually, Mom, I'd like to say something too. The room shifted. My mother's smile tightened. Of course, sweetheart. Go ahead. I reached for the portfolio I had left by the door. Aunt Della passed it to me. I set it on the table in front of me and opened it. I want to talk about Grandma Ruth. Because Mom is right. She would want to see her family gathered in this house. But I think she'd also want her family to know the truth about who this house actually belongs to. The room went quiet. Not gradually, instantly, like someone had pulled the plug on every conversation at once. Derek set down his beer. My father's jaw tightened. My mother's hand froze on her glass. What are you talking about? My father's voice was low. Careful. I'm talking about Grandma Ruth's will, Dad. The one you told the probate court didn't exist. 34 pairs of eyes locked onto me. I pulled the will from the portfolio and held it up. This is the last will and testament of Ruth Eleanor Dawson, executed October 3rd, 2017. Witnessed, notarized, filed with her attorney, Margaret Chen, in Asheville. I paused to let that land. It says that this house, this property, everything on it, belongs to me, not to Derek, not to Dad, to me. That's not real. Derek stood. His face was red. That's a fake. It's not a fake. I kept my voice steady. It's been verified by her attorney and by the probate court in Buncombe County. I looked at my father. Dad, in April 2018, 1 month after Grandma died, you filed a petition with the county claiming she had no will. You obtained administrative authority over her estate based on that claim. Then, in September 2020, while I was deployed to Afghanistan, you signed a quitclaim deed transferring this property to Derek. The room was frozen. A cousin near the middle of the table had her fork halfway to her mouth. She hadn't moved in 30 seconds. Everything you did was based on the premise that no will existed. But a will does exist. It has always existed. Which means your probate filing was fraudulent, and the deed transfer to Derek is legally void. My father pushed back from the table. That's enough, Elise. You're embarrassing yourself. I'm not finished. I pulled out the bank records. Grandma Ruth's records, the ones she kept in the filing cabinet behind the tax folders. Grandma Ruth also documented every dollar she ever gave this family, every loan Dad took and never repaid, every check she wrote for Derek's rent, Derek's car repairs, Derek's wedding. I held up the ledger. $143,000 over 15 years. She kept records because she knew that when this day came, and she always knew it would come, the truth would need receipts. Someone gasped. An uncle at the far end of the table whispered something I couldn't hear. My mother was crying now. Elise, please stop. This is Thanksgiving. This is family. It stopped being family when you stole my inheritance while I was serving overseas. I looked at her directly. You wrote me a note on the front door. Not a phone call, not an explanation. A note. Like I was a tenant being evicted from my own grandmother's house. Pastor Holland spoke for the first time. His voice was quiet, but it carried through the room like a bell. Glenn, is what Elise is saying true? Did Ruth leave a will? My father couldn't look at him. His eyes were on the table. His hands were shaking. Glenn, Pastor Holland repeated, I've known you for 25 years. I officiated your mother's funeral. Look at me and tell me the truth. My father looked up. His face was gray, the color of a man who had been caught and knew it. She was confused, he said weakly. She didn't know what she was doing. Major Okonkwo stood. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Mr. Dawson, my name is Major David Okonkwo, Staff Judge Advocate, United States Army. I've reviewed the documents Miss Dawson has presented. The room went even more still. The word Army hung in the air like a thunderclap. Your daughter was on active duty deployment when this property transfer occurred. Under the Service Members Civil Relief Act, transferring a service member's property without their knowledge or consent during deployment is a federal violation, not just a civil matter. Federal. My father's hand went to his chest. The penalties include fines and potential criminal charges. Major Okonkwo's voice was measured, precise, devastating. Any judge who reviews this case will see a father who waited until his daughter was in a combat zone to steal her inheritance. His breathing was shallow. I didn't steal anything, he whispered. I was protecting the family. Aunt Della stood. Protecting the family? She pointed at me. This girl served her country for 6 years. She deployed twice. She slept in deserts and convoys while your golden boy sat in Mama's house drinking beer and playing video games. She turned to Derek. And you. You took Mama's rocking chair. You painted her kitchen gray. You let your wife hang curtains over windows Mama washed every Saturday morning for 40 years. And you have the nerve to call yourself family? Derek said nothing. Ashley was crying. Their oldest child was asking why everyone was yelling. I closed the portfolio. I'm not here for revenge. My voice was steady even though my hands were not. I'm here because Grandma Ruth spent the last months of her life preparing for this. She knew what you would do. She left me the will, the records, the money for legal fees, and a letter that told me to be brave. I looked around the room at 34 faces. Some shocked, some angry, some crying. This house is mine. The court will confirm it. The law is clear. But I didn't want you to hear it from a judge. I wanted you to hear it from me. In this house. At this table. The way Grandma Ruth would have wanted. I picked up the portfolio and walked toward the door. At the threshold, I turned back. One more thing. Grandma Ruth's letter said something I want to share with all of you. She wrote, "When they tell you family takes care of family, look at those numbers and understand exactly what kind of family they've been." I looked at my father. $143,000, Dad. That's how much your mother gave you over 15 years. And you repaid her by stealing from her granddaughter. I walked out the door. Aunt Della followed. Then Major Okonkwo. Then Pastor Holland. Behind us. The house erupted. But I didn't look back. I walked down to the dock, my grandmother's dock. I stood at the end of it and looked out at Lake Harmon. The water was still. The air was cold. The sun was setting behind the mountains in streaks of golden amber. And for the first time since I came home from deployment, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. The aftermath was swift and merciless. By Friday morning, 2 days after Thanksgiving, 17 of the 34 guests had called or texted me. Not to argue, not to mediate, to apologize. I had no idea, Elise. I'm so sorry. Your grandmother would be heartbroken. But she'd be proud of you. Glenn told everyone you didn't want the house. That you said the military was your life now and you'd never come back to Reedy Creek. We believed him. That last one came from my cousin Tammy. She had been sitting 4 seats from my father at Thanksgiving dinner. He had lied to her face. To everyone's faces. For 3 years. Pastor Holland called me Saturday morning. Elise, I spoke with your father yesterday. He came to my office at the church. He sat in the chair across from my desk and cried for 20 minutes. What did he say? He said he made a mistake. That he was trying to help Derek. That he didn't think it would matter because you were in the military and didn't need the house. Did you believe him? Long pause. I believe he's sorry he got caught. I don't believe he's sorry for what he did. There's a difference. That distinction meant everything to me. The legal process moved faster than Margaret had predicted. The Buncombe County Probate Court reviewed the will, confirmed its validity, and voided my father's fraudulent administrative petition within 3 weeks. The quitclaim deed to Derek was declared invalid on December 19, 2021. The court order was direct. The property at 417 Lake Harmon Road is hereby restored to the sole ownership of Elise Marie Dawson, per the last will and testament of Ruth Eleanor Dawson, dated October 3, 2017. Derek and Ashley were given 60 days to vacate. My father was referred to the district attorney's office for potential fraud charges related to the false probate filing. Margaret explained that criminal prosecution was unlikely given the family nature of the dispute, but the referral itself was devastating. Glenn Dawson, respected church member and 32-year lumber mill employee, was now a man with a fraud referral on his record. Major Okonkwo filed a formal complaint under the Service Members Civil Relief Act. The investigation was ongoing, but the mere existence of a federal inquiry was enough to ensure my father would never try anything like this again. Derek called me on December 20th, the day after the court order. His voice was different from our last conversation. The charm was gone. What was left sounded hollow. Elise, I need more than 60 days. The kids are in school. Ashley can't find a rental this close to Christmas. I thought about it. I thought about my grandmother's rocking chair that he sat in without earning it. I thought about the kitchen he painted gray. I thought about the swing set in the yard and the bicycle in the hallway and the welcome mat that said, "Bless this mess." And then I thought about his children, my niece and nephew. Kids who had done nothing wrong. Kids who were about to lose their home because their father and grandfather had made choices they couldn't undo. You can have 90 days, I said. But Derek, when those 90 days are up, you leave. No extensions, no excuses, no more notes taped to the door. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said something I didn't expect. I'm sorry, Elise. For all of it. Not just the house. For never calling during your deployment. For never showing up. For letting Mom and Dad convince me that you didn't need anything because you were tough. I listened. You are tough. But that doesn't mean you didn't deserve better. I didn't know what to say to that. So I said the only thing that felt honest. Thank you. Now start packing. My mother called me on Christmas Eve. I almost didn't answer. But something in me, maybe the part that still remembered her braiding my hair before school, made me pick up. Elise. Her voice was small, not the performative sadness from Thanksgiving. Something rawer. I've been thinking about what you said, about what your grandmother wrote. I waited. She's right. About your father. About the money. About everything. I knew, Elise. I knew he was going to give the house to Derek. I helped him plan it. I closed my eyes. I told myself it was the right thing, that Derek needed stability, that you were strong enough to handle it, that the military would take care of you. The military did take care of me, Mom. You didn't. Silence. I can't undo it, she whispered. I know that, but I need you to know that I see it now. I see what we did, and I'm sorry. I let her words sit in the air. I didn't accept the apology, I didn't reject it. I just let it exist. I don't know where we go from here, Mom, but I know we can't go back to pretending. She cried softly. Then she said goodbye. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She didn't make excuses. Maybe that was the first honest conversation we'd ever had. The family reorganized itself quietly over the following months. My father stopped attending church, not because he was asked to leave, but because he couldn't face the people who now knew what he had done. The third pew sat empty on Sunday mornings. Derek and Ashley moved into a rental apartment in town. 3 bedrooms. Modest but adequate. Derek got a job at an auto parts store. $12 an hour. It was the first real job he had held in 3 years. My parents were not invited to Easter dinner at Aunt Della's house, or to Cousin Tammy's daughter's birthday party, or to the 4th of July cookout at the lake. Nobody announced their exclusion. Nobody made speeches. They simply stopped being included. The same way I had been excluded my entire life. Quietly, casually, without acknowledgement. The difference was that I had done nothing to deserve it. They had. 6 months after Thanksgiving, I moved into Grandma Ruth's house on a Saturday morning in May. Aunt Della drove up from Asheville with a truck full of cleaning supplies and a determination that bordered on military precision. The first thing I did was repaint the kitchen. Not gray. Warm yellow. The color Grandma Ruth had chosen in 1983 and maintained for 35 years. The second thing I did was put her rocking chair back on the porch. Derek had moved it to a storage closet. It took me 20 minutes to find it, but when I set it in its place on the wraparound porch facing the lake, something clicked, like a bone settling back into its socket, like a heartbeat finding its rhythm. The third thing I did was sit in that chair and watch the sunrise over Lake Harmon, the way Grandma Ruth had done every morning for 45 years. Cried then. Not from sadness, not from anger, from the overwhelming sensation of finally being home. The house needed work. 3 years of someone else's carelessness had taken a toll. The dock boards were warped, the garden was overgrown, the hardwood floors had scratches that made me wince. But underneath the damage, the bones were solid. My grandmother had built something that lasted I used the $68,000 she left me to make repairs. New dock boards, fresh paint on the exterior, a new roof where the old shingles had started to curl. I did some of the work myself. The rest I hired local contractors, people who had known my grandmother, people who were happy to see a Dawson back in that house, who actually deserved to be there. Aunt Della came up every other weekend. She'd bring food I didn't ask for, and opinions I didn't need, but always appreciated. She was the family I had chosen. The family that chose me back. Pastor Holland stopped by one evening in June. We sat on the porch and watched the fireflies come out over the lake. "Your grandmother sat in that same chair the last time I visited her," he said. "She told me she was worried about you. Not about the cancer. About what would happen to you after she was gone. She was right to worry. She was right about a lot of things." He looked at me. "But she was also right about you. She said you were the toughest person in the family. She said you'd fight for what was yours." I didn't feel tough. I felt tired. But I also felt free. Major Okonkwo called in July with an update. The federal inquiry had concluded. My father was not being criminally prosecuted, but a formal finding had been entered into the record documenting the SCRA violation. It would follow him for the rest of his life. "It's not a conviction," Okonkwo explained, "but it's a permanent mark. Any future legal proceeding involving your father will reference this finding. He can't pretend it didn't happen." "Thank you, Major, for everything you served your country, Miss Dawson. Your country owed you this much." Derek reached out in August. A letter, not a phone call. Handwritten. 3 pages. "Elise, I've been working with a counselor. Rachel suggested it after we moved. At first I thought it was pointless, but she's helped me see things I spent my whole life ignoring. I was the favorite. I know that. I've always known that. And instead of questioning it, I leaned into it. I let Mom and Dad give me everything because it was easy. Because saying no would have meant admitting that what they were doing to you was wrong. The house was the worst of it. I knew it was yours. Not because of the will. Because of Grandma. She loved you in a way she never loved me. And instead of understanding why, I resented it. I thought she was playing favorites. I didn't realize until recently that she wasn't choosing you over me. She was trying to protect you from me. I can't undo what I did. But I want you to know that I'm trying to be different. Not for you, for my kids. Because I don't want them to grow up in a family where one child matters more than the other." I read the letter twice, then I put it in the drawer beside Grandma Ruth's letter. 2 letters, 2 different kinds of truth. My father has not reached out. Not a letter, not a call, not a text. I don't know if he ever will. Some people can't face what they've done because facing it would mean admitting that everything they believed about themselves was wrong. My mother calls once a month. Short conversations. Careful. She doesn't ask for forgiveness. She doesn't make demands. She asks about the house, about the dock, about whether the rocking chair is still on the porch. "It's still there, Mom. It's always going to be there." "Good," she says. "That's good. It's not reconciliation. It's not forgiveness. It's just 2 people trying to find a new way to exist in the same story." Thanksgiving 2022. My dining table. The one Grandma Ruth bought in 1985 from an antique shop in Boone. I had it refinished. It seats 8. Aunt Della is here. Pastor Holland brought his wife. 2 friends from my unit drove down from Fort Bragg. Major Okonkwo sent a bottle of wine with a card that said "Happy Thanksgiving, Soldier." 6 people around a table in a house that almost wasn't mine. No performance. No pretending. No notes taped to doors. Just turkey, sweet potatoes, and Grandma Ruth's pecan pie made from the recipe card she kept in a kitchen drawer. Aunt Della raised her glass to Ruth, who saw the truth before anyone else, who loved the one who needed it most, and who fought for her granddaughter from the other side of forever. I raised mine. To everyone who's ever come home to find the locks changed, you are not homeless, you are not forgotten, and you are worth fighting for. If you're still here, let me leave you with this. For 6 years, I served my country. I slept in deserts and rode in convoys and spent holidays in places most people can't find on a map. I did it because I believed in duty, in service, in the idea that sacrifice means something. When I came home, the people who were supposed to love me had taken everything. They changed the locks on my inheritance. They gave my grandmother's house to the brother who never earned it. They did it while I was on the other side of the world, unable to stop them. But my grandmother knew. She knew before any of it happened. She prepared. She documented. She left me not just a house, but the tools to reclaim it. Not out of spite, but out of love. The fiercest, most strategic, most unwavering love I have ever known. If you're in a situation where the people who should protect you are the ones taking from you, hear me. Document everything. Trust the people who show up, not the people who perform. And never, never let anyone convince you that your sacrifice doesn't matter because you are strong enough to endure it. Strength is not an invitation to be exploited. Silence is not consent. And family is not defined by blood. It's defined by who shows up when the locks are changed and the lights are off and you're standing on a porch with nowhere to go. My grandmother showed up. From beyond the grave, she showed up. And because of her, I'm sitting on this porch, in this chair, watching the sun come up over this lake. Home. Finally, completely, irreversibly home. Thank you for staying with me through this story. If it resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe. I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to fight for something that was rightfully yours? Have you ever been betrayed by the people who were supposed to protect you? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you want more stories like this, stories about standing up for yourself and finding your voice, check the link in the description. Until next time, take care of yourself. You deserve it.